Hello, this is Vinny Strumolo, CEO and Chief Clinical Officer at Resolutions Healthcare. I've spent over 3 decades working in the mental health field. My specialty is trauma and addictions. This podcast tells your stories and addresses key topics in the field. Today, I have two special people on the show, my dear friends. Mary Fogarty from New York, who works with the Union Alliance, and Travis Bennett. Today's discussion is on sobriety and staying sober. So let's start the conversation. Welcome, Mary, Travis.
Thanks,
Mary,
Vinny.
let me start with you. Tell me how many years you have been in recovery.
So my recovery date is January 12th, 1986. So it was 37 years this past
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a trip.
Travis?
I'm 7 years in right now. This time.
Congratulations.
This time.
Congratulations to you. Mary, I know because, of course, our friendship, we've been friends now going on almost 10 years, probably. And
Yeah.
I know you follow the big book, AA. So tell me a little bit about your journey.
So my journey began very young, actually. We're blessed with a lot of sobriety in the family. Almost back to the beginning of Alcoholics Anonymous. So our first family member came into AA 76 years ago. Was in and 12-stepped another family member and then another family member. And, it's just been that chain has started now, this big chain of hope in our family, because we do have addiction throughout the family. And so my journey began after my mother joined Al-Anon when I was 11 and brought us to Alateen. And the interesting part about that is my mother wasn't sober at the time, but every person that belonged to that Alateen group is sober today. And the woman who ran that group became one of my first sponsors and was my sponsor for a really long time when I got sober. So I grew up saying never, ever gonna be me, never gonna drink like them, not gonna do that to my kids, all of it. And then, I started smoking pot at 11. All of us Alateen kids were actually. We'd get high and then go to Alateen because it wasn't alcohol. We thought we were good. And so that was the beginning of my recovery journey. I learned about alcoholism. I learned about addiction. I learned that it's an illness. And all that knowledge did not stop me from drinking because I was looking for that filling that hole in my soul that I felt.
You said 75 years, so basically intergenerational.
Yeah.
Or transgenerational is what we call it in the family and therapy arena.
Yeah.
Passed on through generation. Yeah. Travis, when did you start? Your journey look like?
My journey started, I was 19 years old. Went to treatment the first time out in Canton, Texas. I was convinced that I had no idea I've never even heard the word recovery at that point in time. I was convinced that I was going to go to treatment and they were going to lock me in a padded room and I would never see the light of day ever again. That's what my idea of what treatment was going to look like. So I was terrified. Come to find out it wasn't that. But the first treatment center that I went to, heavily 12-step focused. I thank God for that. I mean, I no longer go into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I found church to be my kind of the thing that works best for me. I think that's what's awesome about recovery too. It's not like one size fits all to every. I mean, like what works for me might not work for you. But either way, like as long as you have a program that works best for your situation. I think that that's the proper way to go. But nonetheless, the big book and the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous are the cornerstone of my recovery. Those principles that they talk about, those promises that they have, are true for me today because of the things that I continue to practice that I picked up from discharge from treatment center, hit 90 meetings in 90 days, go to IOP, go to PHP. Those are things that I was doing, but it let me know that I wasn't alone in this entire thing. Talking about generational, I was adopted at birth. I have no idea who my parents are, my biological parents are. I would suspect, the genetic component of addiction probably exists for me. But I'm never going to know that. So why continue trying to go down that path and look for answers on that front? What I do know is that, obviously there was a relapse in between that first stint in treatment and in figuring out, as much as I did. And now, I went to treatment again at 25, went to the treehouse, and I think the biggest difference that and I've already kind of mentioned this, the biggest difference for me is that, like, I thought AA was the only way for me. And then by going to the treehouse, I realized that, like, AA is a critical component of that, but there are so many different things that I need to build upon in order to be able to continue to grow in this recovery journey that I have. And, I meet people like Dalton Blazik, and we go down that spiritual brotherhood that we have, and meet people like yourself and Keller and Gerald. And, each one of you guys has given me an idea as to what I want my life to look like. Funny thing about AA too is that, like, I would always consider myself more of a drug addict than an alcoholic, but for some reason I felt more at home inside of AA rooms than NA rooms. I don't know. I thought that was strange, but yeah, working on 7 years right now, continuing to work in the treatment field, which is bizarre to me still, but glad to be where I'm at.
Well, congratulations on that. And I know, with Mary also still working in the field. Mary and I worked at a couple of programs, and I'm listening to you say that with the AA, celebrate recovery, the religion. I kind of prided myself on that at the treehouse, allowing any road that it took. But what I've come to realize also is, and any approach really comes back around to those 12 steps that you're going to work. Maybe not in the order AA put them out there, but I've always considered that, even when clients were in the group and would say, well, I don't believe in God. I would say, even if you take God's name out of it and you follow those 12 steps, it's a philosophy to get better, to heal yourself, and it shouldn't matter, of course, but that's another podcast. But the other thing, it was always just seeing the different roads. Now, Mary remembers the treehouse, of course, was involved with the treehouse. That's where I met Mary. So what did you know, Mary, coming there the first time when we first met, and just coming on the campus and seeing that, you being a staunch, I mean, you are by the book. I've always listened, and that's why I want you on the show to talk about the big book, because I think you've put enough years now in where you weigh that against the experience and just your life and how you've made that journey. But coming to the treehouse, what stands out for you from what we're saying?
Oh my gosh, just that. So in our family as well, we have some people in the family who, everything, like you said, is based on those 12 steps. So know too, though, that those 12 steps come from the Bible maybe
Right.
not verbatim, but they come from the Bible. So it certainly makes sense that some people use church, some people use Smart Recovery. When I came in, I was so filled with guilt and shame that I was afraid. I didn't want to talk about God. I wanted to think like I'll stick my head in the sand, and if I can't see God, God can't see me, kind of thing, you know. So I had a lot of guilt and shame. I also, Travis, didn't want to come to the rooms because opposite of you, I knew about it, and the people in my life stayed sober, so I knew if I went to AA, I was going to not drink anymore. And I didn't know what else I would do with my life. So that too was happened. And so, you know, there's so many different things, right? We can talk about, I mean, we can do a whole thing on the book Alcoholics Anonymous, but, you know, it talks about the change that happened in the whole world. I mean, if you think about the ripple effect that AA has had, it's really you could never count all the effect that AA has had just on the whole world. And if you think about it, when they put the foreword to the second edition out, now I'm going to read it to you. So they talk about AA and the steps and how it all came to pass, and then the very beginning of AA. So it then talks about, so they talked about the steps, the principles, the traditions, how they kept AA going, why it became anonymous. And interesting, my uncle who got sober the year before I was born, he's passed away, but he always used to say, I'm Buddy Fogarty, alcoholic, because we were not meant to stay anonymous from each other. It was anonymity for the stigma, for not being overrun. If you read the traditions, they were afraid to be overrun with people needing help. So it talks about all of that. And then it says, though none of the principles had the force of rules or laws, they had become so widely accepted by 1950 that they were confirmed by our first international conference held in Cleveland. Today, the remarkable unity of AA is one of the greatest assets our society has. While the internal difficulties of our adolescent period were being ironed out, public acceptance of AA grew by leaps and bounds. For this, there were two principal reasons: the large number of recoveries and the reunited homes. These made their impressions everywhere of alcohol. This is what we always talk about, Ben, of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried. 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapses, and among the remainder, those who stayed on with AA showed improvement. Other thousands came to a few meetings and at first decided they didn't want the program, but great numbers of these, about 2 out of 3, began to return as time passed. And then it goes on to talk about that.
So you jumped ahead of me now, but I did want you to cover that because I did find that interesting. And anecdotally, again, not counting the people, but all the people I know in recovery, it does kind of lay out that way. And
yeah.
And that's why that's always stuck with me when we talked about that. Now, the other piece that I talk about, well, one of my blogs, as I said to refer, I'd say disease or symptom relief. What is addiction? Disease or symptom relief? And the point I was making in the blog is, and this still drives me crazy, is you really don't know what's going on until you do your best, mind, body, spirit, to improve yourself, get better, and feel better. Before then, you know whether it's a disease or a symptom relief. Meaning, you can't just say, if you have unresolved trauma in your past, you're feeling depressed, you can't just say, well, see, this is a disease. You can't say that until you do the work, until you improve your own self-worth, until you do the work to get better. You don't know that. And I'll say only in the past maybe decade did I really start to, I guess, dealing with thousands and thousands of clients, starting to see that, okay, it does kind of sort itself out. People that have worked like you, Mary, you worked very hard, you improved yourself, we still have conversations on past unresolved or resolved trauma, and you're doing all that work, and you still know you can't take that one drink without it turning to 30. And I want you to say the story about if you don't mind, the surgery, which kind of proves that out, because you've been pretty strong. You're probably one of the most balanced people I know. I've actually seen your routines. You work your mind, body, spirit, and that was not long ago. How long ago? And tell that story, because I think that reinforces the fact there is a disease part of this with addictions.
Yeah. So, you know, so my disease when I was younger would say to me, you know what? You were young, you went through a lot, you became a mother at 16, you can probably, start using again, all of those things. So I didn't, thank God. But when I think back to when I did pick up, or periods of time where maybe I went without. When I was pregnant, I went without, and it was so difficult, so miserable, so many things. But the minute I picked back up again, it started like I had never stopped. So a little while, so Vinny and I talk about the disease, and is it trauma? Is it disease? Because I do believe, and it says in the book too, and I know that you spoke about this at Treehouse, which I know we're going to probably hop back and forth to Treehouse, but I saw when I went to Treehouse that there were many different ways, and that some people, once they resolve their trauma, are they a heavy drinker? Are they an alcoholic? Is their brain different? When given good enough reason, can they stop? No, never. And believe me, I had a lot of good reasons to stop and could not. I had a divine intervention. So recently, over the summer, in springtime, I had a surgery. So I was in a twilight anesthesia for the surgery. And the doctor said, number one, redheads need more anesthesia. We have a resistance to anesthesia. It's a gene. It's a gene mutation. I studied it because I was like, I wonder why that is. So it's a gene mutation, and we need more anesthesia. Point is, that the nurse was surprised when the doctor told her how much anesthesia to give me. Then, in the middle of the procedure, I was talking to the doctor. And the doctor looked at the nurse and said, you do realize I'm having a conversation with Miss Fogarty, right? So, yeah, I wasn't under complete anesthesia, but I was in a twilight. Then, and this is when I called Vinny the next day. And the minute the anesthesia started to wear off, my brain said to me, what do we need to say to this woman to get her to give us more? And that is the difference to me, because it doesn't matter what substance I put in my body. As far as a substance goes, I certainly can use, like Vinny talks about, and I first heard at Treehouse, unhealthy grounds for dealing with my feelings. I can use anything. I can use food. I can use people. I can use a relationship. I don't gamble. I'm afraid to win. And Travis, you know why. So all of those things. But my brain absolutely positively works differently than Vinny's brain, or someone who may have used alcohol and drugs to deal with, grounding themselves in some way.
Yeah, I think that really hit home when you told me that story, because in fact, that's why I think I wrote that blog on disease or symptom relief.
Yeah.
What do you think, Travis, hearing that?
it's just as if I needed more evidence to reaffirm. Like, there's a reason why I said, when you asked me how long I had, I said 7 years this time, because like I have to have that mindset constantly that I don't care how long I've got. I have to approach this as if I'm just as likely to relapse as anybody else. I'm just as likely to, I'm one bad decision away from being right back into, best case scenario, going back to treatment. But worst case scenario, if I ever get there, right? I mean, I might not ever get there. And I agree. Like, it's wild to me too that I've come across many people. My wife is one of them, who has been directly impacted by alcoholism and addiction. She lost her father due to alcoholism, and there are certain things that, like the person that might be looking from the outside in would say, "Oh, you two are a match made in heaven," because she understands what how your brain works. Basically, she dealt with her father that way, and but there are certain things that I can tell her, and she still looks at me like I'm a psychopath because she's not in recovery. She's not an addict. She is a quote unquote normie. She doesn't have a substance abuse problem, despite the fact that she had a direct relation to drug addiction and alcoholism, which it wasn't drug addiction, it was just addiction. It was just alcoholism. But despite all that, she's not going to, her brain, like Miss Mary said, her brain doesn't work like ours do. And it's I can't it's why these support groups are necessary. It's why the community of Alcoholics Anonymous, of NACA, Smart Refuge, your churches, your whatever, Celebrate Recovery. It's gotta be, you have to have that group of people that you could go in and say, these are my people. Like, this is my tribe and they understand me. I can come in with the most outlandish thoughts due to my, you know, diseased brain, my addiction mind, my addictive thoughts. I can go into one of those meetings and just lay it all out there, and somebody, if not multiple people, are going to say, yep, been there, done that. I know exactly the way you feel. Here's what worked for me. Have you tried this? And then I can choose to either apply it or not apply it.
Think about this. We understand that we have a spiritual answer to a physical malady. I absolutely positively have a different brain. But think, how many physical things can you think of that are answered by a spiritual answer? And that
I don't understand. You have to explain that a little clearer, Merrick. That one.
see what I'm saying?
saying?
Travis gets it. You don't get it. But it's not that you don't get it. I know you get it. But so I guess it's like this. I get it that you can have a drink, right? Or not. I have family members that can have a drink or not, and can have a drink and then not have any more drinks at any time. So I can understand that, but I have to know and internalize, and on top of that, always share with someone else what I understand to be the way to recover. So it's also in the book that we have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And I am powerless always, but I will remain recovered if I keep doing what I've done, and if I help another person to achieve that also. So to explain it to you.
Well, you just did.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah.
Well, that's something that Treehouse taught me too, that I didn't pick up the first time that I went into treatment, is that, like, I knew that I needed to, I think that was the first time I ever heard it's a selfish, selfless program. or it's not an I program, but a we program. And you like teeter on that, right? Like I have to take on the responsibility of my own recovery, but I also have to live that out. And what I mean by that is like I have to share experience, strength, and hope as often as I possibly can with a fellow alcoholic and addict, regardless of where they're at in their journey. They could be, still in the throes of their addiction, or they could be 12 years sober. Either way, like the result is still the same. I didn't get that part. And I think a part of that was, and this is why that, you know, seeking trauma resolution was so important to me because again, I didn't know that I had it. I didn't think that I did. I thought it was, we've talked about this before in previous podcasts, but I thought it was normal things that I was dealing with. I didn't know that like, this is, this isn't what most people go through kind of thing. Part of that, part of why I couldn't get that is because I didn't love myself enough to love anybody else. And like that's basically what that is. For me to be able to share experience, strength, and hope with somebody else, I have to love you enough to be able to do that. But in order for me to do that, I also have to love myself first. So without being able to recover from that trauma or seek that resolution from that trauma, I was never going to be able to appreciate and value myself enough to be able to share experience, strength, and hope with somebody else.
It drives people crazy when I say you need to be selfish before you can be selfless. The only people who are ever going to get that are the ones who have done the work, because selfish is, I use that word, of course. It's not like I use that word for effect, but the point is until you're worried about you getting better, you can't help anyone else. Even though people build themselves, they use, that's my unhealthy ground talking. Person, place, or thing. I just wrote about that in this past week blog, that I can't live without you. Same thing with the people that have to always go solve everybody else's problems in the world except their own. And their own life is in shambles, but yet they're rescuing, they're going, they have friends in need, know how to run out. And the point being, no, all you're doing now is, again, running out to help everybody else so you don't have to deal with your own problems, and your own life's a mess. Take care of your own life first, do your own work, and the rest takes care of itself. Then you can help someone without you both having to drown. The idea is to reach out, help someone. They don't want help. You might have to let go, and to let go because you have to protect you also. And you're okay with that, as opposed to people who aren't okay with that because the guilt, they just feel so guilty that they left someone to drown, even though they offered help. But if they helped and they drown with them, they don't get that. And that's why I think that's a little bit of that's a little bit about what we're talking about, but that's what I built the whole mind, body, spirit idea on. Until you work those three, you're not going to have an understanding of your addiction, whether it's disease, whether it's symptom relief. And notice I don't say symptom like a lot of people, and I never will. It's not a symptom of unresolved trauma. It's an unhealthy ground to deal with the symptoms from unresolved trauma. So there's a little difference there, but it just doesn't jump from unresolved trauma to addictions. No, symptoms come up and you use the addiction, drugs and alcohol to numb you, which is the unhealthy ground. Anyway.
Which is
Right.
what attracted me when I was doing members assistance work directly to Treehouse, because, and that's why Vinny got a lot of our chronic relapse clients, because what I have learned in the rooms is, regardless of all of that, if there's someone who just struggles to remain abstinent and grow and do all of those things, I don't know anyone who it hasn't come down to unresolved trauma. And that's when I learned about Vinny calling it unhealthy grounds, because I'll tell you, Vinny knows this story. The first time I went to Treehouse, I came with a group of people. And I really didn't know Vinny. I met him a little bit in his office, and he's got an open door, so I went in and said hello to him, and Machismo was there. And I thought, how's this guy going to talk about trauma and detox and reach these people? And I had my clinical director with me, and she said the same thing. And all of us said the same thing, right? We had a real, like, Northeast New York, like, yeah, okay, this guy's going to show us. And we all were, like, with our jaws on the table, writing it down, because the way he breaks it down just makes it so simple and real. And, it talks about it in the book that we need other things. We are not doctors. We're not psychiatrists. We're not psychologists. And we need all of these things, because if we have a mind, body, spirit issue, then we need someone to help us with our mind. We have to get healthy in our body, and we have to take care of our spirit. So it's a triple answer.
Of course, we go on and on and on. We're talking about sobriety, but I thought it was important that you two come on and just share your experiences. And again, possibly reach someone out there who it connects with.